Welcome to Cardinal Talk here. My name is Jack McNeil. It's funny because when I started making videos on YouTube, it was all about the Cardinals. That was the idea. Let's do a Cardinal Talk show. Obviously, it's changed a lot since then. But getting back to the roots a little bit for today's little segment discussion, I want to address what the Cardinals are actually going to be doing here at the trade deadline. It's a bit confusing because it seems like every rumor for a big-name player, the Cardinals are automatically thrown into the mix. And whether that's fair to say, whether that actually has some evidence to back it up, whether there's sources saying, multiple sources saying, hey, the Cardinals are actually talking to this team or not, it's easy to throw them into the mix because of the prospects that the team holds. And not only that, they have some financial flexibility. They did spend some money in the offseason, but they had a lot of salary off the books, so they still have some wiggle room. And they also have an infield that needs some improvement, and you could argue the starting pitching rotation, that also needs some improvement. Now, not by design. I mean, the starting rotation is very solid to begin with. When you have guys like Michael Wacha, Adam Wainwright, Shelby Miller, Lance Lynn, and Joe Kelly, there's not too much room to improve. That being said, we've had 2 injuries knock the team down, and another one, but we just got, obviously, Joe Kelly coming back if you would count the missed time with him. So, if you're looking forward, what can the Cardinals do to really shake it up and make sure that they do make the playoffs and they're a powerful force to reckon with in a short series? The first few pitchers, that could decide the series right there. Well, most people would say get David Price. That's kind of the obvious. I mean, he's the big name out there. It would take a ton to get him, obviously, but the Cardinals would need a verbal agreement or some sort of agreement in terms of a long-term deal. Otherwise, it's just simply not worth it for them to give up guys like Oscar Taveras, guys like Rob Kaminsky, maybe even a Colton Wong, depending on how things actually end up going, and if the Cardinals look towards another infield move. And there's nothing is out of the realm of possibility right now. Steven Piscotty, Marco Gonzalez, who made the debut not too long ago, James Ramsey, a solid outfielder there, Carson Kelly, he's got a pretty high ceiling. So the teams, no doubt, they like the prospects the Cardinals have. It's a question of, can we make a fit here? And while the Rays have a reason, they're obviously struggling, they would have a reason to try to get the most they can out of David Price right now, the Cardinals would definitely have to have a long-term deal in place, or at least verbally. I mean, he even said himself the other day, David Price said, he talked about how amazing it would be to win a championship with the Chicago Cubs. If he can reach a free agent market, the Cubs could snatch him up so easily. Because the Cubs have all this money that they're sitting on. I mean, they could have spent so much more money last offseason. It would have been pointless because they're trying to grow these players and find their core of young players, sustainable players, and then hit the free agent market when they're really competitive. I mean, it's a great plan, and I think it will. The Cardinal Cub rivalry will be reheated in 2 years of 2 World Series caliber teams for many years to come. I mean, I really believe strongly in what the Cubs are doing. Fantastic core they have. That being said, the Cardinals need pitching help, yes. And if they can get a deal with the Rays for David Price and lock him up, that's great. I mean, imagine a Wainwright, Price, Wacha, Lynn, and Miller rotation. And if that deal does happen, you may have to trade someone like a Joe Kelly in that, or a Shelby Miller in that. We don't know. I mean, that's kind of the mystery. So you can start thinking about ideas, but at the end of the day, it's kind of the more principle. Are the Cardinals willing to give up 2 or 3 top prospects for David Price if they know that they can sign him long term? Is it worth it? I mean, in your mind, is David Price worth that? Now, that being said, the Cardinals, yes, in 2009, they were aggressive on the trade front when they saw an opportunity. They've been very smart of late, I think, with their trades. I'm not sure John Mozeliak is going to go out and make the move that everyone kind of would expect. He always gets the guys that they're not rumored for. It's always, keeping quiet. So I would look for a different type of move, maybe not the David Price, a high-profile move as the Indians are also after him. That being said, they went in the trade deadline looking for offensive help, especially on the infield. So with a guy like Tulo out there, I know it's not likely, but it would be a game changer to see him obviously dealt for. He keeps hinting at the All-Star game. He talked about what it would be like to be traded. He talked about, he'd understand that the Rockies wanted to get younger. So he's basically saying, yes, I get it if they want to trade me. And in a way, he's hinting at wanting to be traded to a winning city. So if that were the case, yes, it would be $20 million a year for a few years. And he has been injured, relatively frequently, 120 games played back a few years ago, all the way. a few years ago, 99 games. So the health, I think, would be the biggest factor with Troy Tulowitzki. That being said, he's the best shortstop in the game when he's healthy. He's had an unbelievable year. The Cardinals have the financial flexibility and the prospects to get a deal done. The question would be, would you want to sacrifice some of the depth in the outfield for the future to give up for a guy like Troy Tulowitzki? Do the Rockies actually want to give up the face of the franchise? And then what do you do with the infield? You would push Johnny Peralta, who's just signed for a $75 million deal, who's having a WAR above 4, when Troy Tulowitzki is projected to have a WAR above 5 for the next few years. I mean, Peralta's having a great year. Very valuable for the Cardinals. You push him to a position where I think a lot of people already thought he would be moving to as he ages to third base. It would then push Matt Carpenter, the almost MVP, back to the position he played last year, second base, and it pushes Colton Wong into an odd spot there. I mean, playing every once in a while, probably pinch running sometimes. I mean, he's hit more home runs than I thought he ever would. 6 home runs already this year. So Wong has been a little valuable too, or above 1, getting some experience. That's all good. And I guess the question would be whether the Cardinals would be willing to end the Wong era. I mean, they drafted him to be the starting second baseman with their first pick a few years back. So that would be the main question. If they could get a deal with Troy Tulowitzki, it's obviously kind of a pipe dream, but I think it would make more sense to go for Tulowitzki in some regards. I'm not going to say some regards in David Price, because obviously the need for a starting pitcher is there, but the Cardinals have so many pitchers coming up, and when you look at the infield's future, sometimes it's a little questionable. It's always been a bit questionable. So while it makes things a bit confusing, moving Peralta to third base, pushing out Wong, you would have an infield of Matt Adams, Matt Carpenter, Troy Tulowitzki, Johnny Peralta, and you're looking at Peralta or someone. It could even be a corner outfield spot down the road. That being said, not likely, because the outfield is going to be one of the more crowded areas, with Oscar Rivera's coming up, with Steven Piscotty, a corner outfielder spot. Obviously you just got Peter Borges, but we'll see what happens long term with center field, whether you put Tavares there, whether Alan Craig is going to stick around. I mean, there's a lot of questions with the club. I think the most likely scenario, to be honest with you, is they don't trade for either of them. I mean, if they really want to make a statement, I think the obvious would be getting David Price. I think at the end of the day, they'll probably get a lesser of the two, not have to give up as much, maybe give up one big prospect instead of a package of 2 or 3. If you want to compete with the Cubs in a few years, you have to have that nucleus of players. And the Cardinals are obviously kind of very conservative with keeping their top prospects. Otherwise, they would have traded Miller and a few others last year, this offseason, when they had a chance, or at least dialogue, in acquiring Troy Tulowitzki before signing Johnny Peralta to that multi-year contract. So, again, it's a lot of speculation. Those are 2 names that you can throw out for the Cardinals as possibilities. At the end of the day, though, I mean, you may want to look towards something more short-term, a Cliff Lee, if they can find a deal for that. Cole Hamels would be a very intriguing arm. Look for teams that maybe aren't selling publicly yet, but towards the deadline, have some intriguing options. I think the Cardinals will have dialogue going. They recognize this is a year to obviously win the division. I mean, there's been a lot of teams struggling, but for the Brewers to be right up there with the Cardinals, obviously, that's a huge statement on the Brewers' end, and the Cardinals cannot let them take that division crown. There's no way. So the Cardinals, I think, could be aggressive this trade deadline. The question is how aggressive, and do they want to commit long-term to a guy like Troy Tulowitzki or a guy like David Price, with the future with him is much more uncertain. So let me know your thoughts. Are they going after David Price? Are they going after Troy Tulowitzki? Should they be going after someone else? Would Troy Tulowitzki make things too complicated in the infield? Would David Price make the starting rotation too good? I mean, is it worth giving up the prospects for? And is Tampa Bay going to finally deal David Price? Any thoughts on the trade deadline, just let us know below, as we're getting closer to the deadline, and things have been slow so far. So, see what happens. Anyway, thanks you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. My name is Jack McNeil. Again, this has been Cardinal Talk. I don't know if there's like a new segment, but we're literally just talking about the Cardinals, hence the name Cardinal Talk. Thanks, guys.